Mr. Joel Sousa and Brett Burks. From Natural Resources, Mr. Owen Williamson. And we may or may not have transportation on the phone. We do not, Jonathan Scott. Okay. There are some procedural rules you'll need to follow. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, please adhere to safe social distancing as set within the room, and please maintain wearing facial masks at all times. When your case number and petitioner's name is called, please approach the podium. When you approach the podium, please state your name, address, and if you've been sworn in. The petitioner and or their agent will have 10 minutes to make a presentation. Please make sure to clearly state your hardship criteria as submitted in your application. All other persons or participants wishing to speak will have 3 minutes, and then the petitioner will have additional 3 minutes for rebuttal if needed. The time periods as stated will be kept by the board. Any information such as pictures, plans that have not been previously submitted as part of your petition and you intend to present at this hearing for consideration in support of your petition must be individually presented and accepted by the board. After acceptance by the board, you must submit the item to staff for it to be entered and made part of the permanent record. The board bases its decision on competent and substantial evidence which is presented and which meets the criteria required by the city's code of ordinances. The variance granted by the board will be for what is shown on the site plan and will be in compliance with any terms, conditions stated in the approval of the board. All of the city codes will need to be met. If the case is approved, your variance will expire 2 years from the date of decision. If the case is continued, it will be continued to either next month's VRB board agenda or the next available position on an upcoming VRB board agenda. In this case, that'll be April. If the case is denied, you may wish to have the variance review board's decision appealed by City Council, and you must file a petition for review of the board's decision within 10 business days of the written decision. You will not be able to pull any permits until after the 10-day review appeal period has passed. Your cooperation in ensuring that this meeting is run smoothly is greatly appreciated. May I first move to approve the minutes without objection?
So
Second.
Thank you. Kamaria Pettis-Mackel from the Legal Department. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. So are you asking for a board member to make a motion to approve the minutes from the?
I suppose probably need to modify this script. Will somebody make a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
Sam Walker, I move to approve the meeting minutes from the December 12th, 2020 variance.
December 8th.
December 8th, 2020 variance review board meeting.
Is there a second?
Lynn Hurtak, second.
All right, and a vote, please.
Sam Walker, aye.
Dustin Pastor, aye.
Brett Feldman, aye.
Lynn Hurtak, aye.
Thank you. At this time, I will ask legal staff to confirm any ex parte communications and conflicts, please.
Good evening, Kamaria Pettis-Mackel from the City Attorney's Office. Will the board members please state whether or not they've had any ex parte communications regarding any of the items that are listed on the agenda? Hearing or seeing silence. Additionally, will the board members please state whether or not they have any conflicts of interest regarding any of the items that are listed on the agenda? Seeing none for the record also. Thank you.
Thank you. With that said, is there any business regarding the agenda that staff would like to address?
Yes, Joel Sousa, Land Development. According to your agendas, cases VRB 2106 and 2108 were misnoticed and have been moved to the March 9th agenda.
Okay.
Also, both February and March agendas are now full. So if we're going to continue anything, it has to go to the April 13th hearing date. Also, David Farrell emailed, and he will not be in attendance tonight. And finally, just let you know, we will be doing a workshop meeting on March 27th regarding VRB criteria with legal department, and we'll be sending you emails regarding that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sousa. And is there any new business in addition to what you just said?
No, sir.
Okay. At this time, I'd like to ask staff to please conduct swear-in.
please rise. Raise your right hand. Do you swear to or affirm that the evidence you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do.
Thank you. And with that, let's please call our first case, case VRB 2102, located at 530 Lucerne Avenue. Are you present? Yes. Okay. Mr. Sousa,
Yes. Yes, sir, I'm going to hand out some handouts that the applicant has provided to us.
okay.
I got it.
You know, Ms. Pettis, do we need to address the fact that there's only 4 members and how the voting works so that people can decide whether or not they want to present? We typically do that when we get down to 4.
If you would like to, okay.
Because I believe it requires all 4 to approve, and 3 to deny, right?
Right.
And I think our rules permit automatic continuances for people who would like them.
Who would like, if they would like a continuance?
Right, but they'd have to state that before their
Correct.
presentation.
Okay. So then, we've only got 4 members tonight. We typically would have up to 7. It takes 4 to approve a case. In this instance, everybody would have to agree to approve a case. You would need to decide before you present if you're okay with those terms. If not, you can automatically continue your case to April 13th. So that's your choice, given the low number of board members tonight. There's a chance we'll have one more show up, but we have not heard from her, so we don't know that. Okay, Mr. Sousa, the first case, please.
Yes, sir. First case is VRB 2102. Property address is 530 Lucerne Avenue. The zoning district is R75, residential single family. Property owner is Elder Solomon et al. And the applicant agent is Mark Bentley Esquire. They're requesting is to remove a grand oak tree, 1 grand oak tree for the construction of new single-family residence. This has been reviewed by the DRC. Natural Resources has found this consistent. You'll see on the front of your staff report that was inconsistent. Staff went and met with Natural Resources. We revised the review, and it's in your staff report showing consistent now. All the other agencies either found it consistent or did not find anything wrong with the application. You have 1 opposition letter and 1 support letter. You'll see the support letter is in your staff report, and the opposition letter is on your desk. Let me show you where this property is. This is over on Davis Island. This is West Davis Boulevard. This is the property here on Lucerne. Let's see. Looking for my photographs. This is basically what the front of the house looks like. This is a copy of the survey. This is the front property here, existing house here, and I believe the tree is this 35-inch oak tree right here that's causing the issue. These are plans that were provided by the applicant showing the buildable area with the tree remaining there. And he's given you a couple of viewpoints of that. That should conclude my report. Owen Wilson, Owen is here in case you have any questions regarding natural resources.
But Kamaria Pettis-Mackel from the City Attorney's Office, I just wanted to state, Mr. Sousa, that the letter that was obtained in opposition is from Kim Clark, just for the record. And additionally, the board members have a copy of the letter.
Yes.
Thank
you. Okay, petitioner, please step forward. State your name, address, and if you've been sworn in, please.
And board members, my name is Mark Bentley, 401 East Jackson Street, Tampa 33602. I represent the applicants.
Have you been sworn in?
Yes, I have, thank you.
Okay, you've got 10 minutes to present.
Can I have about 15? We have two experts, or just kind of see how it pans out.
We've got 10 minutes. That's what everybody gets.
Oh, okay. The applicant is seeking permission to remove a 35-inch grand tree in order to construct a new two-story single-family home that conforms to all City of Tampa requirements. However, conforming to city standards results in an unreasonable configuration as defined by the code. And I give you copies of the code. I was going to kind of walk you through the analysis because unfortunately the staff report left off a very key component out of your code to determine what's reasonable versus unreasonable in justification for removal of the tree. The applicant is working with both their architect, John Mistretta, who's here to testify, and two arborists, one being David Riley, former City of Tampa official responsible for grand tree analysis and permitting, and Mr. Mark Hughes is also in attendance and a certified arborist. And actually is on the city's approved arborist list. They have determined that the tree must be removed because of the impacts on both the root system and the excessive canopy removal. What I like to do is go over the relevant code sections, which I've given you, and because I'll have to paraphrase some of this because we only get 10 minutes. I thought under your rules we had 15, but apparently I'm wrong. This is a unique situation. Not only is the tree an impediment to allowing reasonable use of the property, so is the lot shape itself. The frontage on Lucerne is 87 feet, and the rear lot line is 60 feet. And I've given you copies of the surveys. Okay? So you can see here it's 87 and 60. The zonings are 75, the setbacks are 7 on sides, 20 in the rear, 25 in the front. This is a site plan here of the proposed footprint of the house here, two-story home. Here's what it would look like, and this is assuming we received design exceptions administratively to encroach into the setbacks in the front, rear, and the sides. And you can see the impacts of the tree. This is the first floor with the tree, and this is the second floor. And here again, this is assuming we get certain relief under the code. What the code does is they allow for encroachment to determine a reasonable use of the property to the extent that would be allowed as a design exception administratively. And the intent of the code is if you have to exceed the parameters of a design exception to build your house, then that's unreasonable. You know, what they're trying to say is, you know, other than that, they can't force you to redesign your house or to go pursue variances or other options. And while I'm up here, this case is substantially similar to a case the board approved on September 8, 2020. I think it was Domain Homes, and it's case number 20-51. And you can see here the trees essentially in the same location as it relates to our client's property. So on page 2 of the handout, it sets forth the criteria for the board's consideration. That's page 2 of the staff report, and it's 27284.2.25. I think there's 3 code sections I gave you. If we keep the house, keep the tree, it reduces the square footage of the house by 27%, and also reduces the rear of the house to 16 feet in width. Without the tree, it'd be 48 feet. So the important code section is, if you go to page, under this table, City Code Section 27284.2.5, if you go to the second page, I've highlighted it, and it talks about other construction activity, and it says a grand tree may be rendered hazardous due to impacts of certain construction and may be removed if the building footprint or structure or addition adheres to the standard setback and height requirements of the zoning district, would impact the structural stability and condition of the tree root system, which in this case it clearly would. I've submitted 2 reports into the record, okay, confirming that. And then if you look at that section at the end, there's a footnote number 5. And then the next one is, the applicant has demonstrated there's no other reasonable reconfiguration of the applicable proposed development components. And here again, they reference footnote 5. So footnote 5 is used to determine by this board whether or not the removal of the tree would be reasonable. And what this says, it says when feasible, encroaching up to the critical root zone with root pruning, which is not possible. You're going to hear Mr. Hughes talk about that. And also it says, altering the proposed placement, orientation, or height of any building or structure, the size, et cetera, provided that the structure location is not adjusted more than allowed by a design exception as provided in section 2760. So 2760 allows the design exception, the front setback to 2.5 feet, the side yard setbacks 2.5 feet, and the rear 2 feet, okay? So that being said, even with those minor adjustments, which would come out to about 300 square feet of additional development, the house would still be reduced in the realm of 25%. So that's kind of the threshold. What the code's saying is you don't have to exceed the design exception parameters. And if you have to do that, then that's unreasonable, therefore you'd be entitled to a permit. Another basis for issuance of the permit on the same code section, footnote 5, says the internal flow or function of the structure is not adversely altered by the reconfiguration. You're going to see here, I showed you on the site plan, the unconventional construction of this home if the tree were to remain. This is the second floor, and this is the first floor. So it'd be substantially altered, it'd be unconventional, it'd be completely abnormal. You know, and you really couldn't design that home, and Mr. Mistretta can address that. What I'd like to do right now is, Mr. Chairman, just have Mr. Mistretta testify for just a minute or so, John, okay, because we only have 10 minutes. And then follow that up with Mr. Hughes, and then we'll be done.
Okay. Please state your name, address, and if you've been sworn, please.
John Mistretta, 936 West Cimarron Drive, Tampa. Yes, I was sworn in.
Okay.
I'll just speak. So as Mark mentioned, the existing footprint of realistic buildable area for both levels, if the tree wasn't there, is about a little over 10,000 square feet. That's if it was a perfect world and we could build a rectilinear home. But that's a straight extrusion. It doesn't account for any outdoor space or any porches or things like that. With the tree, both levels, it reduces it around a little under 7,000 square feet of buildable area. And you can see the main impact is to the second floor, which reduces to 16 feet of width from the side yard in, 16 feet, and it runs almost 75% of the buildable area of the second floor, so that grossly limits our ability to place any bedrooms or private spaces on the second floor. Even if we could figure out a usable scenario for this layout, we still couldn't utilize the outdoor spaces on the ground floor for any pools or outdoor living areas that could be covered just before or just because of the impact of the roots themselves.
Okay. Now I'll bring up Mr. Hughes. He's a certified arborist. And while he's coming up here, I'd like to point out to the board, I think it's the last document in the handout I provided you. It's also in your backup, is the neighbors in support. And I think they're at 530 Lucerne? Yes. Okay. The Giffords, they submitted that affidavit in support, and it's very important, not only the support, but a large portion of the tree root system and canopy is also on the Giffords property, and they're in support of the application. Go ahead, Mark. Identify yourself, your address.
Mark Hughes, 8611 Vivian Bass Way, that's Odessa, Florida, 33556. ISA certified arborist, ISA track qualified, and one of the city self-certified arborists.
And have you been sworn in?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You've got 1 minute.
All right, 1 minute. So we're going to cut through a lot of this technical jargon here, which basically is just a cumulative total of stress from construction impacts due to building a conventional style house, as these two gentlemen have cited here. So with that cumulative total of stress from the construction impacts of building the conventional style house. Here's some cited bibliographies. Here are trees in Davis Island that were meant to be retained. You have to look at the reduced crown density. That is sort of hard to come by or really get an appreciation for, but you can see the dieback in here, the reduced crown density here. Some more right in here. Hopefully everybody's seeing that okay. Again, no recent shoot growth, very low crown density, and these are all in different stages of decline. So some are more recent, some are more advanced. This one right here you can see has been declining quite a bit longer, really low crown density there. This tree right here is nearly dead in the front of this house. This tree right here, which would be a similar 35-inch type live oak that we're looking to have removed from the same rear corner of the house. This one is declining. You can see the reduced crown density there, and will be a costly removal for that homeowner right there. This is all on Davis Island. Trees in the area of Davis Island here without construction impacts, taken just today as well to show you the crown density, the color, the leaf complement, the shoot growth that they exhibit, that these ones lack. And these trees, I can't be sure of their mitigation trees, but big houses, they're void of big trees. You can see these trees right here that, you know, instead of having an old tree decline for 5 years due to the construction impacts of building a conventional style house, you can just go ahead and mitigate a tree. And I understand that doesn't replace that large tree right away, but look at the vitality and the shoot growth here with these trees. Look at these trees right here. This yard was void of mitigation or old mature trees as well. And these were likely mitigation trees at that time for, you know, as part of their permit process. And you can see how viable and healthy they are. Whoops. Again, trees in the area that were mature trees, not mitigation trees, could have been at one point, but mature trees in the area that show good crown density, color, leaf complement. And these trees that were, you know, likely made to retain, that they just don't survive that well. They just cannot handle the construction impacts, and, you know, it's a costly removal. And then you're going to likely get a lesser mitigation complement for that tree at that time because it's, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the road. So it's going to be in a poorer condition. Likely netting less mitigation trees when you could have just planted mitigation trees at the time of construction and had very viable assets to the sustainable canopy.
Okay,
Okay,
Thank
20
you.
seconds and I'll tie it up.
Sure.
No problem? Okay. I know this is really rushed here, and if you look at our application, hopefully you've had the opportunity prior to the meeting today to look at the backup, and we laid out a lot of the justification and rationale. But just kind of in summary, we've submitted 2 professional arborist reports, one David Riley, one of the most highly regarded arborist in the area, along with Mr. Hughes here. We've met our burden of proof in demonstrating that any reconfiguration within the bounds of the zoning code, with or without the design exception relief, is unreasonable by definition under footnote 5. Number 2, that the structure's internal flow and function would be unreasonable unless the tree were removed. It'd be a 16-foot house in the rear if the tree's not removed. Number 3, that the tree cannot be trimmed in a manner that would ensure the future viability of the tree. The root system will be adversely impacted by the new construction, causing the ultimate demise of the tree. And here again, importantly, the neighbors to the north, the Giffords, where the tree is partially situated, are in complete support of its removal. If you have any questions, we'll certainly attempt to answer those. Thanks for your time.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak on this case? Seeing none, we will open it for board questions.
I have a question. So you provided us with a couple surveys that show, or I guess depictions of what the house would look like if the tree were removed. It looks like it's about up to a 10,000 square foot house, and then a picture of what it would look like if the tree were not removed. Do you have like a survey or an outline of what the proposed house would look like, you know, where the rooms are located, that sort of thing?
Mr. Bentley, can you use the microphone? Thank you.
We have the development plan
Okay.
with the number of bedrooms and things like that, kind of a list and their sizes, but we didn't, we thought we were putting the cart before the horse, because if we do all this design work okay, and then can't get a variance, we spent thousands of dollars. We knew what the footprint would be, and we knew what components we'd want in terms of rooms and the sizes, and that's exactly what this footprint is. But we haven't broke it down. I looked at other applications you have, and some people actually submit a floor plan where you can see all that stuff, but we just thought it was premature to do that. Because this is a very substantial house, and to design it and then not get the variance just didn't make a lot of sense, to be honest with you.
I
Makes
agree.
sense. Do you know approximately how large the proposed house is going to be?
John, John, come on. Say your name again and just answer.
John Mastretta. It's RS 75 zoning, so we could do up to 7,500 square feet. Right now, it's somewhere between 6,600 and 7,200. There's a couple houses in the neighborhood that were realistic comps. They're about 6,700 on the same size lot.
Any other board questions?
Yeah, just one. I understand that you are not required to work within the setbacks, but let me ask you, the current house as it stands, the existing home that is on this lot, is actually built, is it built into the setback?
Mr. Feldman, I really couldn't tell you that.
Okay. And
I have a
I ask because I'm looking at the picture that you have here, and it looks like it goes, I don't know if it goes into the setback, but it certainly goes right up to the setback with
But
that
what
covered concrete.
What I can tell you is, you have a survey, I gave you that in your
Yep.
backup.
Yep.
If you look at the survey, and here again, I wish I had a scale here, but you can kind of see just by some of the dimensions here. Like say to the north, that looks like it's probably in the range of 8 feet where I'm,
It says 9.3 feet
9.3, okay.
and 8 feet on the south.
So, that being said, we conform with the city setbacks, we being this house, which are 7 and 7.
Right.
So they both exceed that. And the rear is 20, it substantially exceeds that. And the front is 25. Now, this property line's at an angle. No one's gonna build a house at an angle.
Right.
And that's what I showed you here, is technically where I'm pointing, that's 25, but we're not gonna build a house on an angle. And I looked all over Davis Island, and I didn't see anything like that. It just didn't, I guess that's just not a common design, you know. But what this does, even Mr. Feldman, if we built out to this little triangular piece here, that got us another 300 square feet. So you just have this weird looking house, you know, just for the sake of 300 square feet. So they, you know, certainly didn't want to do that as well. So they don't want to remove the tree, okay? I mean, that's, believe me, it's just in the wrong location, and they can't build a house with a reasonable configuration. Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Well, you've actually got 3 minutes for rebuttal.
Mr. Bentley, can you use the microphone?
Thank you for the opportunity, but I'll decline.
Okay. Well, then without objection, we will close the public hearing and open it up for a motion or board discussion. And I can't make a motion, so.
I think that this is a close call for me. The reason being that based on the depiction that we have of the buildable area when the tree remains, you know, the house can be constructed in excess of 7,000 square feet, which is pretty standard for the area. You know, one of the criteria we look at is whether the house can be reasonably reconfigured. Now, I do appreciate that, you know, a 16-foot wide bedroom is probably small for the area. So I'm kind of on the fence here, but I am interested in maybe some discussion about some of the other factors that the applicant meets here.
Well, they said it reduced their buildable area by 27%. And I think that's probably taking into account the second floor, that basically, it looks like it's cutting 40% or so out of the second floor. I believe, let's see. Yeah, you're right. 7,000 roughly square feet in an odd configuration.
Now, one of the things we do look at is, you know, how it affects the flow of the house, and so it'd be nice to see a layout of the proposed design, although I do appreciate the fact that it's expensive to, you know, get that sort of site plan.
Yeah. Well, to me, it's a very odd, it would be a very odd house. It's already on an odd-shaped lot. And then you're taking out these big sections that we saw here, especially the second floor. And you end up with a diagonal L-shaped second floor, which is incredibly unusual, hard to lay out. So, you know, to me, it doesn't seem like you can build a reasonable house within the, at least within the size and probably style of what's surrounding on the island. So I think to me, it makes sense. I mean, it's a huge canopy. The canopy reaches over the midpoint of the site towards the south. So that's a massive chunk of the buildable area.
Mr. Chairman? No, that was my question.
We can't speak now.
Okay, no, that's fine, I was just,
Well, and I'll jump in and address that point to some degree. I mean, the point that Ms. Walker made was one that was troubling me as well, about the flow of the home. And so I understand what your point is that certainly from an architect standpoint, the design of that modified plan would be challenging. You know, in the old days, we would talk about shifting this home, right, under the old code. And in fact, if you look at one of the documents that's in our packet, if you look just at the map, it looks very much like the house to the neighboring property and to the south goes well closer to the setback than even the existing home that's here. I was concerned that maybe if we were to shift things, we would be messing with the flow of the neighborhood. But that, if you just look at this house right there, it's closer. But that's under the old code, and we're under a new code. And if we are forced to work within the confines of what's there, I agree it's a close call, but I'm leaning towards saying, you know, especially with the arborist description of what would happen to this tree, were it mitigated to even allow the truncated construction.
Yeah, you know, I was thinking the same thing. I don't think I've ever seen a report that shows surrounding trees that have been built close to and what they look like. And at least the ones we saw, and we don't know if those are impacted by construction or not, but they were really close to new houses, and they were noticeably thinner than the other trees. So that was an interesting take I appreciated seeing.
Lynn Hertak, I'll just weigh in. I agree with other members that I wish we could see a site plan of what could be, because generally that allows us to visualize a bit better. And I did think about the movement, how can it be moved? In the arborist report, it says it is a moderate risk tree, which normally I had to search for that. But what concerns me is that they're gonna have to remove they're still gonna have to remove a large branch. I'm trying to find the photo that goes toward the south, and that concerns me, again, in terms of how the tree will survive. I agree, it could probably, I mean, the square footage seems possible, but I am concerned about the health of the tree after the building around it.
Okay, I'll make a motion then.
Okay.
I move that the variance for case of VRB 21-02 for the property located at 530 Lucerne Avenue be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing for removal of a grand tree based upon the petitioner meeting the burden of proof with regard to the 6 factors for determining tree removal as set forth in section 27-284.2.5 F4 of the city code for granting tree removal, specifically that the evidence provided in the record showed that alternative construction methods, even if they were utilized, would, if not irreparably damage the tree, would certainly hurt it and result in it not thriving like it would in its natural circumstances. That the proposed building cannot be reasonably reconfigured such that the second floor would flow in accordance with a typical current residential house in the neighborhood, and that the impact as shown on the survey, that the site cannot be reasonably reconfigured to save the tree.
Thank you.
That was an excellent motion. I'll second it.
Thank you. And a vote, please.
Sam Walker, aye.
Dustin Pastor, aye.
Brett Feldman, aye.
Lynn Hurtak, aye.
All right. Motion's been approved 4-0.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening. Appreciate it.
Okay, the next case is VRB 2110, located at 416 South Orleans Avenue. Are you present? Yes? Okay. Mr. Sousa, please.
Yes, sir. Case of VRB 2110, 416 South Orleans, property zone RM12, residential multifamily. Property owner is Desislava Kolexisov. I tried. Proposed work is to do a residential addition and add a 2-story accessory structure. They're proposing the following reductions for the main structure. Reduction of the north side yard from 7 feet to 2 feet 10 inches to match existing house, and to reduce the front yard setback from 25 to 10 feet 4 inches. That is to vest the existing house also. He's also requesting setbacks for the accessory structure to reduce the rear yard from 3 feet to 0 feet and to increase the height from 15 feet to 27 feet. DRC reviewed the case. Transportation had as an issue because they did not clearly show 2 parking spaces for the single-family residents and access to the parking. So they had an issue with that. Other than that, the DRC found it consistent. Let me show you photographs. And okay. This is the subject property. It's in South Tampa and kind of in the Hyde Park area. This is the crosstown going towards downtown from the south. This is the subject property right off close to Willow Avenue. This is in your packet. This is the existing front house as it sits right now. Closer picture. I'll show you the existing survey. This is also in your packet. Let me see. This is the street right here. This is the existing small lot right here. The existing house is already at 10 feet 4 inches. And right now, this is the configuration of the backyard that has a parking pad, small house. Where is my other one? for my site plan, excuse me. It was right here. Ah. Okay. This is the proposed site plan in your packets. This is the street front in here, this existing house as it sits right now. They're gonna do a two-story addition in the back here. They're going for the side yard setback from 7 feet to 2 feet 10 inches to match up with the existing house. They're attempting to vest this house with the front yard setback. And now they're proposing an accessory structure back here. This one, we're going 3 to 0 with an alley in the back. And they're going up to 2 stories. Concludes my presentation. I'm here if you have further questions.
Kamaria Pettis-Mackel from the City Attorney's Office. I just want to put on the record, Commissioners, that there was a letter that you should have received in your packet, and it's from Enza, A-I, the last name is spelled A-I-E-L-L-O. Just for the record, there is a letter. I just want the Commissioners to be reminded of that.
Does that conclude your report, Joel?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Please step forward, state your name, address, and whether or not you've been sworn.
Dear Chairman and members, Konstantin Kulaksuzov, address 414 South Orleans Avenue. As Mr. So said.
And have you been sworn in?
Yes, I have been sworn.
Okay, you've got 10 minutes to present.
In South Tampa, especially where the house is located, the lots are very narrow. This particular one is 35 feet, and the way to construct an addition that would not have any weird looking building, the only way we can do it is if we had granted on the side and rear setbacks from the from 7 feet to 210 on the side, actually on the north side, and from 25 to 10.4 on the front. And for the accessory structure, it is from 3 to 0. Without these setbacks, we won't be able to construct any structure that it would fit what we need. We are a family of 5, and I have in-laws. My father and my mother-in-law, they live with us, so we're 7 members of the family. And the only way to move in a house, we'll need extra room, so we can all live in a house.
Does that conclude your presentation?
That's it.
Did you see the 5 hardship criteria that would have been submitted with your application? And would you like to run through those with us? Because that's solely what we base our decision on, so you might want to go over those.
On our block, there is already 3 or 4, actually 4 houses that they have the same layout, floor plan, with the same front, side, and rear setback. And we're gonna mimic the same properties. We're not asking for anything different than what their existing properties are on the lot. On the block.
Okay. All right, does that conclude your presentation?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak on this case? Please come forward. You can go to the other podium. State your name, address, and if you've been sworn.
My name is Batista Mordini, and my address is 418 South Orleans Avenue, Tampa, Florida 33606, and yes, I have been sworn in.
Okay, you've got 3 minutes.
Okay, I am the neighbor to Constantine here, and I have exactly the same house in the respect that they were both built in 1908, exactly the same, and he was referring to their 4 built exactly the same. I happen to have a master's degree in architecture with a specialty in historic preservation, so I had to go through the same process. And so part of his hardship that I happen to know from my own house is that it's an existing non-conforming situation. So it's built as it sits right now. It's because that, since 1908, it's been all rezoned. It's sitting over the property lines, and just to be able to extend the house is what he's looking to do. And then the detached structure, I know, he's just trying to, because of the configuration on the lot, is just trying to maximize what he can. So I'm in full support of this, and the one thing I would like to say is that I commend him for trying to preserve the history of what's there on my street. They've been going one by one, and it's nice to see that somebody's taking the effort, because it's a lot of effort to maintain a original wood from 1908. So I fully support this, and that's it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak on this case? No? Then we will open it up for board questions. Mr. Feldman.
All right, so a couple of things that I understand, and then we'll talk about one of the things that I do not. I understand matching the proposed addition to the side yard. That makes sense on both sides. I understand adding, I understand the front yard because you got an existing structure, and it's existing non-conforming, built in 1908, and you're going to preserve that structure. That all makes sense. The part that I'm having difficulty with is the proposed accessory structure going to 0. And what I see, it's hard to see, but what I see from some of the neighbors to the north is that they do have similar setups to what you have or what you're requesting, but it doesn't look like they all go to 0. It looks like some of them are actually set back a little bit more, and I'm wondering why you need it to go to 0 as opposed to setting it back to 3 feet off the property line.
As I mentioned earlier, I have 3 little kids, and if I move everything farther in, I will not have any backyard.
Well, you'll have 3 feet less backyard, but you would still have a backyard between them, just a little bit less.
Correct, yes.
Okay, so can you explain to me what the hardship is? I understand it's a small property. I understand that it's thin and an unusual shape, and so we're gonna work with that. And certainly you could, if you wanted to maximize the space of your backyard, you could build less of the addition, right? I mean, you have the opportunity to do that. You can design it now. So again, the issue I'm having is just on that backyard lot line. Can you explain to me the hardship as to why it needs to go from 3 to 0 as opposed to some lesser amount?
As I said, the yards are very, very small, and if we go with that structure on the addition, and if we go with the minimum room size, we're basically not gonna have any backyard at all. 3 feet, it's a 3 feet. If you have a 10-foot yard and we have decreased with 3 feet, we have a 7-foot yard, backyard. So on a 20-foot yard, 3 feet is absolutely nothing, but on a 10-foot yard, 3 feet is pretty good size.
I don't see dimensions on what the yard is as proposed. I see a 20-foot proposed structure. That structure looks like it would fit easily into the backyard as it's currently, if this is to scale, that 20-foot long extension, accessory structure looks like it would fit in the backyard. So we're talking about 20-plus feet in distance between the proposed accessory structure and the proposed construction. And is this accessory structure, is this going to be 2-story?
Correct.
Okay. That, not the addition, but the one that we're talking about now that you're asking to go to 0, that's going to be a 2-story structure?
Correct, that's correct.
Will there be a garage underneath it? Is that the plan, that the bottom half of the accessory structure will be a garage and the top will be living?
The way that the back alley is, I don't know if we can do a turning radius for the garage, but if we have an open, if we have an opening, we can probably fit a vehicle there.
Okay, because one of the concerns that was raised by transportation is that 2 additional parking spots need to be added. So even if we were to approve everything as shown on the site plan, if you have to adjust the site plan to account for the parking, there's a chance that you would have to come back here. So I just want to make sure that you've considered where the parking, the 2 additional parking spots will go.
It is an option for us.
Point is, we do not have the ability to alleviate the parking requirement. So even if we approve what you're asking for, you still have to provide those spaces for transportation.
And that may actually require you moving the structure closer anyway, just to give you room if that's not, I was assuming that that was a garage underneath on the ground floor of the accessory structure.
So if we move it back 3 feet from the,
I can't tell you that. I understand what your question is going to be. If we moved it back 3 feet, is that going to alleviate the parking? I can't tell you that. I don't know. I think transportation would be able to answer that question.
well, the lot is 35 feet, so the requirements from the transportation, it's 36 feet, so the actual lot size doesn't allow that.
And again, we can't do anything about the requirement that there be 2 parking spaces on the site. My only concern was, is there a hardship for allowing the proposed accessory structure to go to 0 from 3? And I just haven't heard that, particularly when we have this issue of the parking.
Because in theory, I was assuming that it was going to be a garage as well, because I would be more comfortable approving an increase in the height of the accessory structure in order to accommodate some living quarters on top of parking that's required by the city. I think that could potentially meet the hardship criteria for us, to approve the increase in the height, which is something else that we, are also being requested to review here.
If the minimum requirements for the garage will fit that structure, then we're gonna have to convert it into garage in that case, for the first floor.
How many of your immediate neighbors have 2-story accessory structures back on that alley?
4. It's on the same street.
Okay.
How many of those 4 have garages with living spaces above?
They're all garages, yes.
Okay.
It's typically what we see.
Yeah, right. Wanted to clarify.
Okay. Well, any other questions?
I don't have any other questions.
Well, it looks like transportation already talked. Because, one concern I have is that
Did you guys care to weigh in, either transportation or,
In regards to the parking requirement,
yes?
Yeah, Jonathan Scott, City of Tampa, Transportation Planning. You're gonna have to have 2 parking spaces for this project somewhere on the site. Like even if all the variances are approved, he'll never get through permitting because they'll say, where's your 2 parking spaces, for this big addition and major renovation. So, that's why I was kind of making those comments. I wasn't sure what the petitioner was saying, he's only gonna do 1 parking space. Well, he needs to make that a 2-car garage, first of all. If not, you might want to continue, because you're gonna have to get a different game plan. That's all I wanted to mention.
Okay. I have a question for
yeah.
legal. So, in theory, if we were to approve the 2 setbacks, not the rear yard setback, but the front and the side yard, and then we were to approve the increase in height of the accessory structure, but the applicant subsequently needed to move the structure back for some reason, would he have to come back before us since the site plan has changed, even though he's noticed?
This is
The height.
site plan specific, so if he were to change what the orientation of the project is, that does change what the request is, what the project is.
So-
I have a question for transportation.
Yes.
So how many parking spaces are necessary for this entire lot?
He'll need 2 parking spaces just because he's gonna do the renovation and expansion.
So,
That'll trigger a requirement of 2 parking spaces. Right now, whatever parking he has is kind of grandfathered in, but when he goes and makes all these additions and major renovation, that'll trigger that he has to have 2 parking spaces.
so even though there's an accessory structure, it's only 2 parking spaces and,
That's correct.
okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, do we have other questions for the petitioner? All right. Well, you get 3 minutes for rebuttal, if you'd like to say anything else.
If I have to have the 2 parking spaces, that accessory structure can be converted into garage on the first floor.
Sir, Kamaria Pettismacher for the legal department. I know you're soft-spoken. I couldn't understand what you just said. Can you speak a little bit louder into the microphone?
The accessory structure would be a 2-car garage if it's requirements for 2 parking places for the lot.
Okay. Does that generate any more questions from the board?
I guess, I mean, maybe we can cover it in discussion, but I mean, I have concerns about where the access to the second story then
Yeah.
would be. If that would require an external staircase or whether that would be covered internally within the
True.
garage itself. which
Yeah,
would-
I agree, and I don't know if we should be talking about this now with the petitioner. Actually, that is a good question. If this is going to be a second-story living, where would the stairway structure go?
On the south side of the building,
So external? Outside?
external, correct, on the
Okay.
south side.
Well, that would have to be shown on the plan, which isn't shown on the plan currently, and that would potentially require.
Another setback?
Yeah, additional setback, so that's not noticed. You'd have to essentially shrink your structure to be able to fit it in, and then you're changing the layout of the project, which would create problems for your permitting.
I'm not an architect, but the other option to be external staircase would be between the 2 structures.
Yeah.
That would be feasible.
Joel, is there any allowance for external stairs in the side setbacks?
Joel Sousa Land Development, they do need to meet the accessory structure setbacks.
Okay. Okay.
All right, I have one more question for legal. So last month, we did a bifurcated motion. Is it possible to do a bifurcated motion with an approval and a continuation, or a denial and a continuation? Like, can you combine a continuation in a motion?
You can bifurcate your motions, but you can only entertain a motion to continue if that's what the applicant is asking. So you can't do a motion respectfully to continue something if the applicant is not asking for a continuance. So you could do a motion to approve, a motion to deny. You could bifurcate your motion for the 1, 2, 3, 4 requests here, but you can only do a motion to continue if that's what the applicant is asking for. And if that's what he's asking for in regards to the accessory structure, or the entire project altogether.
Before we go down that road, you said if it was a garage, it might change your opinion on the height and location. and he said that if that's required for parking, that's what he would do. So, does that change the way you're thinking about it, or we need to discuss continuance?
Well, I guess I was thinking if he needs to figure out the turn radius, perhaps he can push it back 2 feet. He would still want a 1-foot variance.
And if you guys could just speak louder, just to make sure that the applicant hears what your communication is.
Okay.
I think, I guess where I'm coming from is, if we feel like we're okay with that concept, he would still have to work out the details of it through permitting. And if he wanted to take less than what we granted, he could with permitting. So it's really whether or not we're okay with that concept, and then the details of stairs and cars and turn radiuses, he'll have to work out with permitting to build it. And we would give him, the ability to go up to this request, or he could dial it back if he physically needed to.
Okay.
But that may not affect us, our decision.
Okay, fair.
So I don't know why you chose to look at me, but it was a smart decision to look at me, because I did have a question for you. Is with the addition of stairs in between these two structures, if you were to add them, they would be obviously permitted, but with the addition of stairs access to the second story, would that change the site plan and create a problem for the petitioner?
So, Kamaria Pettis-Mackle, for the record, with the discussion that's happened today, that he's saying that the increased height of the accessory structure from 15 to 27, there has to be access to that second, second level, and he could work through, that could be a condition of your motion, that he worked with staff on location of the stairs to ensure compliance with the setback requirements. If you want to, make your motion in regards to that, but he has to work within the setback requirements for the accessory structure, and he could certainly work with the staff or the department regarding that requirement.
Okay.
But if you, again, are not, if that changes, it doesn't change the scope, because he's asking to increase that height. You have to have access to that.
Right. So hypothetically, if the applicant decided to put the stairs on the south side of the structure and essentially shrink the structure to get that access, that could be something that could be worked out with staff afterwards, as long as we created a condition that access,
Be worked out with staff.
okay,
Because that would be a less than request.
yeah. Okay. I just was concerned that by modifying the
And all
site
the time
plan,
into it, yeah.
that would throw things out, but it
But
sounds
you're-
like that's
And
feasible.
I apologize, he has to work within the confines of what you deny. I mean, if you deny it, then that's not a
Okay.
discussion. But if
Okay.
you grant the variance, you are tying what the scope of his project can be. He could work less than that, but he'll be tied to the scope of what your approval is, if that makes sense.
All right.
So here's a concern that I have. So the accessory structure encroaches into it does not encroach into the accessory structure side setback, so actually, never mind.
Right.
Okay,
Just the rear.
It's just the rear.
okay.
Okay. Any more questions? No? Okay. You didn't get a full rebuttal, so if there's anything else you'd like to say, you still have 3 minutes.
Nothing to say.
Okay. All right, then we will close the public hearing and open it up for a motion or board discussion.
Lynn Hurtak, I think there's nothing wrong with the main structure. He didn't have any real reasoning for wanting the back setback, so I'm not inclined to approve the back setback, but I would the rest of the property.
Yeah, I was feeling that way at first, but I think that the fact that there's a back alley, first of all, which is very important, but that there's 4 houses on the immediate street with the same, similar, we don't know if it's 0 or 3, but a 2-story garage livable structure. but most importantly, the back alley. And to Ms. Walker Decker's point, the turn radius to get into a garage is gonna have to be worked out with transportation, or just practically. So if 0 doesn't work, then I'll have to move it back just to make a turning radius. So I feel like that'll work itself out practically. And if there's room in that alley to make the turn at 0, then that means the alley's probably plenty wide enough that you're not really encroaching on anybody. So that's just my perspective, but I was where you were to start, and I have come around solely because of the garage factor.
Right. And that was where I was coming from too, was I didn't understand, I didn't know what that was, but I did see the alley afterwards, after our discussion on that. So, I don't know, it's tough. And there are plenty of things to work out. But, and I will also point out that I can't tell, looking at these properties, where those garages situate. I can't tell whether they're at 0, at 1, at 2, at 3. It's hard to know where that alley ends and the properties begin. So,
Oh, I'm still stuck because to me, there's no hardship.
then I think it
Well, I think
makes,
the hardship's the ridiculously small lot and
Yes.
ability to expand or tear down the house, and, you know, choosing to try to not tear down the house and create a certain amount of livable space for the family. And it's not unique to this street, because everybody else that's seen, or at least 4 others, have done the same, probably for the same reason, small lot. So he tried to elaborate that, and when Brett pushed him on the setback, he said, you know, the size of the backyard, which is a reasonable, you know, practical use for a property. So I think it comes back to the small lot, practically.
why don't we do this? If you're okay,
Yep.
I'll go ahead and make a motion, and I'll, just for practical discussion purposes, I will separate the issue of the rear yard setback from the motion, from the initial motion, and then we'll handle that one separately so that we can have a full discussion on it.
Okay?
All right. I move that the, Brett Feldman, by the way, I move that variance request for VRB case, for case VRB 21-10, located at 416 South Orleans Avenue, as depicted on the site plan, presented at the public hearing, for a reduction of the north side yard setback of principal structure from 7 feet to 2 feet 10 inches. Reduce the front yard setback from 25 feet to 10 feet 4 inches. Is there no reduction on south yard setback?
No, it's just the increase of height of the accessory structure
Okay.
from 15 to
And the,
27.
all right, and the increase in the height of accessory structure from 15 feet to 27 feet, with an encroachment of eaves and gutters for the following, with the following condition, that any, actually, we don't need a condition if we're only talking about main structure.
But in your motion, can you state, and I'm sorry, sorry,
Feldman,
Mr.
yes.
Commissioner, can you state whether or not you're approving it?
Apologies. I move for approval. I was going to say with conditions, but it doesn't sound like we need conditions
Doesn't seem
if
like
we're
it.
only talking about the main structure. So,
We're talking about the accessory height,
Yes.
but the.
but there's no conditions necessary for
Right,
that.
exactly.
Okay. Upon the applicant presenting competent and substantial evidence, do you want me to start over on that?
That's good.
Okay, I'll try that again. Move that the variance request for case VRB 21-10 for property located at 416 South Orleans Avenue be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing for the reduction of the north yard, side yard setback of principal structure from 7 feet to 2 feet 10 inches, to reduce the front yard setback from 25 feet to 10 feet 4 inches, and to increase the height of the accessory structure from 15 feet to 27 feet. Based upon the applicant presenting competent and substantial evidence in the record and at this public hearing of an unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty when considering the 5 hardship criteria set forth in section 27-80 of the city code, specifically that this is an unusually slim lot. The lot size is particularly small, that there are other houses that are built either similarly or in near identical situations, that the existing non-conforming structure was built in 1908, that the applicant is preserving this structure both in the side yard setbacks and the front yard setbacks, and simply adding on and conforming to the existing setbacks for this structure.
Sam Walker, second.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. And a vote?
Sam Walker, aye.
Dustin Pastor, aye.
Brett Feldman, aye.
Lynn Hurtak, aye.
All right, so the north side yard, front yard, and accessory height have been approved 4-0.
Okay. Now, I move that the variance request for VRB 21-10 for property located at 416 South Orleans Avenue be granted as depicted on the site plan based upon, at the public hearing, for the reduction of the accessory structure rear setback from 3 feet to 0 feet. Based upon the applicant presenting competent and substantial evidence in the record and at this public hearing of an unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty when considering the 5 hardship criteria set forth in section 27-80 of the city code, specifically that, again, the applicant is dealing with an unusually slim lot, and that the applicant's property backs up to an alleyway, and so it is not encroaching upon any rear neighbor. Did we need conditions for this one? No?
No, because the code is the condition.
Okay, all right. All right, then I'm done.
Second?
Is there a second?
No.
I can second, right?
You can't make a motion, but you could do the second.
I will second.
All right.
Also, I'd like to remind the board, takes 4 to approve and 3 to deny.
Yeah.
Vote?
Sam Walker, aye.
Dustin Pastor, aye.
Brett Feldman, aye.
Lynn Hurtak, aye.
Thank you. Your motions have been approved 4-0.
Mr. Chairman, members, thank you very much.
Our next case is VRB 2111 at
Hold on.
581.
Quick question
Yeah.
first. I'm sorry to interrupt, but, and this is something we've never had to deal with before, but my parking runs out.
I know.
What do we do about
So I
that?
paid $12.
Well, do you have it on your, can we ask for do a recess, please?
Let's take a recess for parking issues.
No, I just parked in.
times even back when dreams were all we had to last. So as I wake up this bright morning, nothing's gonna bring me down. Waves are singing, wind is forming, summer's here to stick around.
581 Marmora Avenue, are you present in the room? All right. Mr. Sousa, let's hear it, please.
Yes, sir. BRB 2111, property address 581 Marmora Avenue on Davis Island. Zoning is RS 75 residential single family. The owners are Andrew and Katie Miller, agents Amy Joyner and Garrett Gilkey. They're coming in to request a rear yard setback. And this should be this should be section 27-156, not 290. Reduce the rear yard setback from 20 feet to 10 feet, 1 inch. And what they're attempting to do is to remove a primary structure on the site and remodel and do an addition to the existing accessory structure and make that the primary structure.
Okay.
I'll get into that. DRC had no issues with it. Historically, they've gotten, for the back unit that they're coming back in for to remodel, they did get a variance back in 2001 to reduce the rear yard setback from 20 feet to 12 feet 6 inches. So there is a historic variances for the existing accessory structure.
So, wait, Joel, are you saying that the active rear setback is 12'6", or that was a variance they
That
never
was for the
acted on?
accessory structure at the time.
Okay, for the accessory, but now it's gonna be
Yes.
primary.
Mhm.
Got it.
Existing accessory structure. So, let me get into this for you. This is what the house looks like. I'll get into the location. That's the house. That's the primary house. This is gonna be demolished. This is the front. This is on Davis Island. This is one of the canals. This is Marmora. The subject property is here. It backs up to the water. What you see here is this is the existing survey of the property. This is the existing house that you saw the picture of. This is the accessory structure in the back near the water. They're proposing to knock down the existing primary structure and remodel and do an addition to this structure and make it the primary structure so that they'll just be parking here. So they'll have a large front yard, and the house is kind of pushed to the back and expanded and enlarged. And this will become the primary structure. So this structure will, if you give this the setback, this will have the ability to go 35 feet. Staff had no issues with regard to this request.
Okay. Please state your name, address, and if you've been sworn, please.
Garrett Gilkey, 519 North Newport, Tampa, Florida, and I have been sworn in.
Okay, you got 10 minutes to present.
To communicate what Joel had communicated earlier, we're looking for a reduction in the rear setback for the proposed structure. Currently, right now, what we're calling accessory structure, this attached adjoining piece of the primary structure, is at 10 foot 2 inches for its setback to the rear. So I'm sorry, it's set back at 10 foot 2 inches to the rear setback. We're basically asking for a continuation of that same setback dimension from a standpoint of looking at a lanai addition on the side of the structure. So we're going to be remodeling the structure and adding an addition here adjacent to it, and would like a continuation of the setback at the current location of that exterior wall. Like Joel had said, we had, there were two VRB-01-05 had a reduce in the rear setback from 20 feet to 12 feet 6 inches. As you can see, that structure is already within that. 62678, there's a rear yard setback from 30 feet to 12 feet. Similar to the request here, VRB 20-30 on August 11th, 2020, was a request for a continuation of a plane of a structure for a storage space above an existing porte-cochere, to compare to the grandfathered-in nature of this. Here's a depiction of the structure and the lanai addition to it from another angle as well. That's it.
Did you want to run through the hardship criteria?
Yeah, we believe that the hardship is that we have a pre-existing structure and within the primary structure setback. We don't want to move the pre-existing structure. We also want to maximize the amount of green space for that property.
Okay. Does that conclude your presentation?
Yes.
Is there anybody in the audience that wants to speak on this case? No? And we'll open it for board questions.
Mr. Gilkey, you speak about a lanai, and maybe it's just me, but I interpret that as an unenclosed structure. Is that what you're talking about, or is the addition actually going to be? I saw the pictures and I couldn't quite tell. Is that actually going to be?
It's a two-story covered porch.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So
it's-
here's a depiction of that for you.
Right.
So we do have the roof line of the structure. So we're remodeling the structure, and we have the roof line continuing over that opened aired space.
Okay. So what you're adding, you're keeping essentially the exact structure that's there.
Yeah.
You're adding a two-story wraparound porch, is another way of putting it, right?
Yeah,
And you're demolishing the other structure that's in front.
that's correct.
Okay, interesting. Are you, purely out of curiosity, not necessarily for approval purposes, you gonna put like a fence in around, is there,
Vegetation.
Okay.
Yeah, so we plan on putting some vegetation in the front.
cool,
Yeah.
all right. No other questions? Thank you.
Are there any other questions? I think this is the most unusual request I've ever seen.
Some context here, so the adjacent property is owned by the client, and so we're trying to maximize green space.
Yep.
And in light of the structure from a fair market value standpoint being worth just the dirt.
Yeah.
So we're doing a small remodel to, from a long-term standpoint, knowing that it's eventually a tear down for somebody, while giving it an opportunity to be used functionally for the family.
Okay.
Very cool.
Any other questions? No? Okay, well, you've got 3 minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you.
Okay. Then we will close the public hearing and open it up for a motion or board discussion. I'll just say that, now that I know that it's an open porch, you're really only extending the rear, encroachment a few feet, and it's open, so it doesn't seem nearly as, impactful as I thought initially.
And we also know that it's not impacting the neighbors tremendously because they are the neighbors.
Yeah, and we've got zero opposition, which
Yes.
is unusual for a waterfront encroachment, so I don't see any issues with it. Also, it's still tied to the site plan, so if in the future, a future property owner wants to build, they'd only be able to encroach in that one length of building. They
Right.
couldn't take over the whole back.
Logically, if somebody else wants to build there, given the location of this property, this building is not gonna be there.
No, I know, but they could still rebuild in that footprint.
Yeah, the setback
Even if
would
they tore it down.
remain.
Okay, so would somebody like to make a motion?
I can make a motion.
Okay,
All right, I move that variance request for case BRB 21-11 for property located at 581 Marmora Avenue be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing for a reduction in the rear yard setback from 20 feet to 10 feet, 10.1 feet, with encroachments for eaves and gutters based upon the applicant presenting competent and substantial evidence in the record and at this public hearing of an unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty when considering the 5 hardship criteria set forth in section 27-80 of the city code. Specifically, that the variance will not substantially interfere or injure the health, safety, or welfare of the others. The property backs up to a canal, which the rear property owner would be the most affected by this setback reduction. And one of the other 2 neighbors that would most be affected is the property owner itself. And the variance is in harmony with and serves the general purpose of the Tampa Comprehensive Code, and specifically to encourage green space and future development, which this is preserving.
Lynn Hurtak, second.
okay. And the vote, please.
Sam Walker, aye.
Dustin Pastor, aye.
Brett Feldman, aye.
Lynn Hurtak, aye.
All right, motion's been approved, 4-0.
Thank you.
Okay, the final case of the evening is VRB 2113, located at 2910 Los Angeles Street. I assume you are present. Good. Mr. Stusa.
Yes, sir. Property is zoned RS50, residential single family. Property owner is Catherine Meyer and Jason Turk. They're requesting a reduction in the rear yard from 20 feet to 13 feet for a main structure residential addition. DRC reviewed the case, and Natural Resources found it consistent with conditions, and that the applicant will work with Natural Resources at time of permitting. Let me show you where this property is. This appears to be in South Tampa off McDill Avenue. This is Angela's. This is the subject property. That's a look from the front door. Sorry. And this is the site plan that is in your packet. This is the existing house. This is the addition. This is the 13 feet that's being requested. Staff is here if you have any further questions.
Okay. Please state your name, address, and if you've been sworn.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Chairman and honorable board members. Jason Turok, applicant, along with my wife, who's not here, 2910 West Angeles Street, Tampa, Florida, 33629. The house is in the Palmacia area.
And have you been sworn?
Yes.
Okay, you've got 10 minutes.
Thank you. The house is old. I'm sure you guys do with a lot of old houses, 1925. It's a beautiful area. We have a huge oak tree in the backyard, and some site plan. I don't know if this is reflected in the materials you have, but there's an oak tree on this side, and I apologize for not using orientations. I'm not savvy in that regard, but it's a 48-inch oak tree. I don't know what kind of oak tree it is. It's a huge canopy. And so we're asking for a modest setback to accommodate additional space that we need as a family. The house is relatively small for the area. I guess in general, it's 1,500 roughly square feet. We're asking for an additional roughly 647, so let's say 650 square feet addition. It'll require, it looks like, a setback reduction from 20 feet to 13 feet as depicted here. And in terms of the criteria, we believe the tree poses that unique practical hardship, I guess practical difficulty that will prevent us from moving vertically. And we believe because of the tree, the modest request is within the guidelines, and that we believe we can demonstrate all the necessary criteria. The layout of the inside of the house, I don't know if that's in your material, is this. Well, this is the proposed layout, but the existing, well, I guess this is the proposed layout. The existing is right here with the proposed addition on this side. I have a survey also, which may have been included. The survey was back in 2017, it looks like, when we purchased the property. And that tree is depicted here. We want to keep the tree. We want to be very careful with the tree, which is why we want to move horizontally instead of up. There's no way we can go up, in our opinion, because of the canopy of the tree. And for these reasons, we would ask respectfully to have the rear setback reduced from 20 feet to 13 feet.
Okay, does that conclude your presentation?
Yes.
Is there anybody out in the lobby that wishes to speak on this? Seeing none, board questions? I have none either. All right, I suppose no need for rebuttal then?
I waive rebuttal.
And we'll close the public hearing and open it up for a motion.
I'll do a motion.
All right.
I move that the variance request for case VRB 21-13 for property located at 2910 West Angeles Street be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing for a reduction in rear setback from 20 feet to 13 feet with an encroachment for eaves and gutters, based upon the applicant presenting competent and substantial evidence in the record and at this public hearing of an unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty when considering the 5 hardship criteria set forth in section 27-80 of the city code, specifically that they cannot go up because they're trying to protect a tree.
Sam Walker, aye. Second.
I second that. All right,
Sam Walker, aye.
Dustin Pastor, aye.
Brett Feldman, aye.
Lynn Hurtak, aye.
All right, motion has been approved, 4-0.
Thank you.
All right, and we've avoided the 4 board member deadlock tonight.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Congrats to everybody, and we are adjourned.